Dogs are very much pattern detectors. So, whether you are doing it intentionally or not, you are always creating patterns and playing out patterns throughout your day. And your dog is very aware of these patterns. Humans as a whole are very predictable. And, if you think about somebody that's in your life that who sort of has like maybe a quirky little thing they do, right? Or something they do when they're a little bit nervous. So dogs are always detecting patterns. And so what that means is that whether we are doing it intentionally or not, they are paying attention to that. So we might be actually creating some habits that we don't want them to have. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So pattern detectors always wondering what usually happens here. So they use these patterns as a way to sort of detect, okay, well, what does this mean? What's the meaning here? What if she does this plus that, that must mean this, right? Right? Or if he does the same, this plus that, oh, that means something totally different. Okay. And I'll give you some examples of that. So these are called many things, but for the purpose of this, we're going to be referring to them as PPPs. So PPPs are the predictable patterns of precedent. What you want to think about is it's almost like these are rhythms or rituals in everyday life, right? So they are predictable, they are patterns of precedent. So they mean something, right? When the world makes sense through patterns, the brain can relax. So what that means is that, if you think about let's say tying a shoe. That's a good pattern, right? Everybody ties their shoe a little bit differently. Some people make, they might, I don't know what the teachers might know this now of kids, but you do the loops around, and then I remember when I was trying to teach my kids, I was like, do I teach them the bunny ear method of tying shoes? Or maybe there's something else that can be taught. And actually I had looked it up. But then he went to school and he can tie a shoe. Maybe he's not the best at it, not the fastest. He might have needed to learn a few extra skills there, but he can tie a shoe. Um, he doesn't have to think about how to do it as much anymore. And certainly as an adult, I don't have to think about it, but I tie my shoe very differently than he ties his shoe. And my daughter ties her shoe very differently than my son ties his shoe. But anyways, the brain can really relax when you don't have to think about how to do each of these individual things every single time you're going to do them. It's like there are these chunks of behavior throughout the day that you just don't have to think about. And so our dogs also don't have to think about what's going to be happening next or what does this mean every time these individual things happen if we can chunk these things together and create patterns out of them, right? So that will also help trust grow. So they can trust what's happening next. They can trust what our intentions are. They can trust the environment that they're in. They can trust that we've got their back, So all kinds of trust can grow when the world makes sense to them. They can trust it. They can really rely on what's going to happen next. Okay. So here are some more benefits of PPPs as we dig into this more. So dogs' brains are very wired to look for patterns, right? This is very normal. Again, we all are. With the shoe tying example here, this dog might be like, "Oh, you're putting on your sneakers. I know what this means. It means that we're probably going for a walk," right? As opposed to, "Oh, you're putting on your fancy mom shoes or work shoes or whatever." And the dog's like, I know what that means. We're not going for a walk. I'm probably staying home. Right. So they might go settle more. So if they can start to predict what each of these things mean, then they can, rely on what's happening next. Right. So it's our job to, number one, stay aware of what our current PPPs are and also to make them as predictable as we can, just to help our dogs out because the world is very confusing for dogs. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you one of my dog's PPPs.
In the living room, right? She's not. You're not in your mom room.
I know, I did use it.
Yeah. Ollie boy.
So as soon as my son shows any sign that he's starting to set the table, honestly, this kind of starts with when I say, Alexa, Announce dinner time. When I say that, a lot of times Willow's like, maybe I should go get my blanket now. So she had kind of walked off as if she was going to get her blanket, and she kind of laid down with it in the living room. And then what happened was my son started setting the table. My daughter came downstairs thinking that she was outside, not realizing she was in the living room. So she had opened the door. But usually when my son starts setting the table, then she's like, oh, let me go get my blanket. I'll bring it into the crate. And then we close her in the crate and give her just a couple kibble, and that's it. So that started with us getting her blanket for her, asking her to go to the crate, giving her a couple kibble, and then closing her in. And the reason why we do this is because we let the birds out at dinner time. And so she needs to be in the crate. We don't quite trust her with the birds. She just got used to that pattern, right? This is what we're gonna do now. So I'll go get started with it, right? But it started with us participating in the pattern with her more, and then she kind of turned it into her own thing. The PPP is when it's around dinner time and the kids are down here kind of setting the table. Um, she can recognize, there's probably a little bit more to it, but she can recognize that this is probably the time when I'm going to need to go in the crate, and she always wants to have her blanket with her so she can kind of suckle it. Every once in a while, I do have to remind her to go get your blankie, and then she'll go running over to wherever it is, grab it, and drag it to the crate. So that's one of her PPPs. So here are some examples of like a morning routine PPPs, right? So the morning wake up. So the PPP would be maybe the alarm goes off, let's say 6 a.m., right? Whatever time the alarm goes off, you sort of wake up, you might do like a stretch, or for me, you might pick up your phone and see what's going on, whatever it is. And then maybe your dog does a nice stretch. Maybe they're sleeping next to you on the floor on their bed and they stretch out. And then that might also mean to your dog that, oh, you're going to go to the bathroom because humans always go to the bathroom first. And then we're going to go downstairs. So the PPP is the alarm goes off and you sort of wake up and stretch, right? And that means these next things are what to expect, right? So your dog wakes up and stretches because they expect to be getting up at that point. And they expect that you're going to be absent for a moment, to use the porcelain toilet that we fancy humans like to use. And then they expect that they're going to get to go downstairs at that point. Versus maybe the alarm goes off. This is my husband versus me. Alarm goes off. Maybe your husband or your spouse does the stretching and is like getting up and getting out of bed, and the dog's like, it means nothing because dad doesn't do these things. He's not the one that usually lets me out. Or if it were my husband, it would say 4 a.m. And so at 4 a.m., he's just barely together enough to get to work. So he's not feeding her at 4 a.m. He's not letting her outside at 4 a.m. So over time, she's gotten used to the fact that this doesn't mean anything to me, right? She continues sleeping. But when I do it, it has a very different meaning for her. Okay. Another example, dogs potty and breakfast, PPP. So the PPP might look like the dog goes outside, the dog goes pee, the dog comes inside, and that pattern means it's time to eat, right? So, and I guess what I should have put in here is like at a certain time of day. So this might follow up the above PPP, right? So it might be that you go downstairs and then you let your dog out, go pee, comes in, it's breakfast time, versus all those other times throughout the day when you might let your dog out, they go pee, they come in, they don't necessarily expect breakfast because they know that there are certain times of day that certain things happen, right? Based on other patterns throughout the house and how their belly's feeling and all that. Another one, coffee time PPP might look like, again, this is a good me versus my husband example. So my PPP might look like I brew the coffee, I hopefully sit and enjoy the coffee. I guess this is my dream PPP. I sit and enjoy it, and Willow goes off and she gets her bone and she starts chewing it nearby because she realizes that, like, okay, mom's having her coffee. This is a great time for me to be around, but, chew my bone or something. And maybe versus a spouse or somebody else in the house making coffee, and maybe that has developed a meaning over time of, ooh, play with me, play with me. Are you going to play with me now? Oh, you're always going to, you always do this thing where if I bring you my ball and I put it in your lap, you will throw it. And maybe mom or whoever, the other person, didn't do that. So you can have two very different PPPs with two different people. Okay. That's kind of a beautiful thing because sometimes it's like, well, my husband always lets my dog jump, or my wife always lets my dog jump. Does that mean that my dog's going to jump all over me all the time? And no. Sometimes they'll push it, sometimes they'll try, but as long as you stick to your predictable pattern, then a lot of times dogs are very good at letting that go sooner rather than later. Okay, so here are a few other examples for departures. Leaving the house for a neighborhood walk, okay, might look like your sneakers go on, you grab the leash, you put on your dog's harness, you have your treat pouch or your fanny pack that carries your phone and your wallet and all your other stuff. You might grab your phone, your poop bags, whatever it is that you might grab to take your dog out for a neighborhood walk where you're just going out the door, right? You say to your dog, okay, let's go for a walk. And your dog realizes, okay, we're going out the front door. We're going for our walk, right? Versus leaving the house with your dog for an outing PPP. So it might look similar, but different enough where your dog will recognize, okay, it's the sneakers plus the leash and the harness and the poop bags. Oh, but there's water and the phone. And oh, I just heard the jingling of the keys. And you say, let's go to the car. And that might mean they're going to go out to the garage and get in the car. So your dog can be very good at deciphering between we're just going out the front door and going for a walk versus, oh, we're going to the car for a walk. It might look like short leash versus long leash. That could be a difference. Again, different shoes, you picking up your keys, there's stuff we do that we won't even recognize that we do. And then leaving the house without your dog, PPP, might look like you might say to your dog, okay, let's go potty one more time. You let your dog out, right? They pee. And you put on your non-sneakers, you put on your maybe slightly fancier shoes. You grab your lunch box, your phone, your keys, your purse, whatever it is, your wallet. And that to your dog may mean, oh, and you might say something like, I'm going to work, watch the house for me, or something like that. And to your dog, that might mean like, okay, I guess I'll go chew my bone. I'm not going, right? Because you didn't grab the leash, you didn't grab the water. You didn't put on my harness or grab the poop bags. You're not wearing those sneakers that I really like when you wear. So that has a very different meaning for our dog. And again, everybody's going to do things differently. You might get dressed differently. You might shower versus not shower. You might not shower if you're going to go for a walk or a hike with your dog, but you might shower if you're not going to do that and you're going to go to work, right? So things like that. All right, so I'm going to show you a demo here of one other PPP, which is the time to go home PPP, like let's go get in the car. I have one client who has a dog who does not love going in the car. He would rather just keep hiking, walking, adventuring, right? And so with him, whenever I have him out, I will say, okay, to the car when it's time to go. All right. So here's a little example of my own dog, Willow, doing this. So the PPP might look like we're out for a walk. I say something like, okay, time to go home. Let's go to the car. The car is available, is around. Okay. And then maybe I open the trunk so that my dog can jump into the crate in her case. And so for my dog, that probably means, okay, I should just go find a car and I should go jump in on my giant bone, as is evident in this little graphic. Okay, Willow, time to go home. In the car. Come on, to the car. Good girl. Okay, wait. Okay, up. Good girl. Okay, so basically what that video should look like is she's sniffing around, doing her thing. She probably still wants to explore if she could. And then I say, okay, time to go home. Let's go to the car. And she's like, oh, okay, I guess we're done exploring. And she goes to the car, jumps in, I always give her some treats when she gets in as part of her PPP, right? Okay, so that is another example and can be very helpful for dogs who do not want to stop adventuring. Predictability counters stress and anxiety. The brain is naturally wired to thrive on patterns. So this graphic is just showing you how, for a dog who gets a lot of stress or is often anxious, the more we can add predictability into the mix, if we can make things as predictable as possible for them and as clear as possible for them, it will counter or, rebalance that stress and anxiety. So it's really important that if you have a dog who does get stressed and does get anxious, that you add more and more predictability into the mix. Okay. And when we're thinking about building resilience, yes, we want to still be predictable, but you also will want to vary, add some variables in there that change things. And that's kind of for a different talk. But in general, the more predictable you can be, the lower stress and anxiety will become. We still want to build some resilience in there. So we don't want to be so rigid and patterned that it's like, oh, but when something hard and scary happens that's not within the normal predictable routine, I don't know what to do with that, right? So we still want to add some other stuff in there to build that resilience. But when we can add these chunks of predictability, that is only going to help them in the long run.